The changing of the guard ceremony is one of the most famous attractions that people come to see when they visit London. We all love the pageantry, the tradition, and the military precision that's displayed when the Queen's Guard marches towards Buckingham Palace. It's one of the many unique royal traditions that make our country so famous. But most people who come to watch this do it wrong. Because when people get here, they'll stand in a crowd somewhere around the palace, and it'll be so crowded and uncomfortable they won't be able to see all that much. And if you have spent hours queuing at the palace gates, you might see something, but you'll have no idea what's going on. Well, I'm here to help you with that. There's a way of observing the changing of the guard ceremony without having to queue for hours or being crushed by tourists. If you follow this guide, you'll have a much better time. Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Ultimate Bucket List, and today we're watching the changing of the guard ceremony. But doing it this way, you'll have a much better time and be able to see much more. Let's start by looking at a map of Buckingham Palace, and you'll need to be familiar with some of the buildings around it. This is Wellington Barracks, which is where the Queen's Guard actually lives. And on the other side of St James's Park is Clarence House and St James's Palace. It's here at St James's Palace where I want you to start your day. You'll need to get there at about 10:20 AM to secure a prime spot across the road from St James's Palace. You're not allowed to stand on this section of the street, and the police will move you out of the way if you do. At exactly 10:30 AM, a detachment of the Old Guard, i.e. the guards coming off duty, forms up here at Friary Court. They'll be inspected by the captain of the Old Guard to make sure that they're up to a presentable standard. Meanwhile, the Old Guard coming off duty at Buckingham Palace forms in the Palace Forecourt and is also inspected by their captain. At this point, they'll start closing the roads in and around the areas of each palace. And at the exact same time at Wellington Barracks, the new guard is being formed, i.e. these are the guards that are just about to go on duty. The captain of the new guard will inspect them, making sure that their hats are nice and fluffy and that their uniform is spotless. They then form the new guard with the marching band in front of them. Obviously, you can't be in 3 places at once to watch all of this, but trust me, this is the best way to see it all. The marching band will form in the front of the exit at St James's Palace, and the Old Guard will line up behind them. But before it gets to this point, move down to the Mall itself, specifically this spot right here. This will provide you the best vantage point of the Old Guard marching down the Mall. At exactly 10:43 AM, the Old Guard of St James's Palace leaves and you get this nice shot of the Queen's Guard marching and turning the corner onto the Mall. You can then follow them down the road, and not too many people are lined up here, so the view is pretty good. But be warned, these guys march very quickly. If you're fast enough, you can get some very good video and photos before they get to the Victoria Memorial. After that, this is where you'll find the crowds of people and it's impossible to get near the palace. Before you get to the Victoria Memorial yourself, peel off and walk quickly through St James's Park and head towards Wellington Barracks, because we're going to be watching the new guard coming out. The best spot to stand is this corner right here or on this side of the street there. Whilst you're getting into position at Wellington Barracks, the Old Guard from St James's Palace, that you just watched marching down the Mall, will proceed to march around the Victoria Memorial to join the Old Guard at Buckingham Palace. They'll enter the forecourt through the gate and take up position beside the Old Guards coming off duty at Buckingham Palace. This happens on the south side of the forecourt. The Old Guard then awaits the arrival of the new guard coming in to replace them from Wellington Barracks, which is where you'll be standing. At Wellington Barracks, the new guard and the marching band will take up their formations. At exactly 10:57 AM, the band starts playing music. Only when the new guard is fully assembled and the regimental flag, known as the colour, is displayed, they march out of Wellington Barracks towards Buckingham Palace. if you're standing on this corner, you can follow them up to the Victoria Memorial. It's tempting to go towards the palace gates and watch the actual ceremony, but I assure you that you'll not be able to get anywhere near the place. And even if you do, you won't be able to see anything. Instead, what we're going to do is cross the Mall again and take up a spot right here just outside Clarence House. Whilst you're doing that, the actual changing of the guard ceremony begins behind the palace gates. The new guard enters Buckingham Palace at exactly 11 AM. It marches in front of the band and halts to face the old guard. The band will then start playing the new guard's regimental slow march, and the old guard and the new guard will then present arms, i.e. salute each other with their rifles, in which the captain of the old guard will shake the left hand of the captain of the new guard. This signifies that the keys of the Buckingham Palace have now been handed over, and thus transferring the responsibility for the Queen's security to the new guard. Officers of both the old and the new guard salute the senior captain with their swords, and during this period, the ensigns, carrying their respective colours, which are the flags of each regiment of course, will parade the length of the forecourt from left to right. Whilst they're doing all of this, the marching band will start playing music to entertain and distract you from what's actually happening. And most people who come to watch the ceremony have no idea that the really important stuff is actually happening behind the band. The reason why you're waiting a few hundred metres away at Clarence House and not at the palace gates watching this is because part of the new guard will peel off and march down the Mall at exactly 10 past 11, where hopefully you'll be standing. They change guards at Clarence House and St James's Palace in 2 stages, and this is so that these places are never unguarded at any time. As you can see, almost nobody is here. So this gives you a completely unobstructed view as to what's actually happening during a guard change ceremony. And even though the exact same thing is happening at Buckingham Palace right now, you won't be able to see any of this, because it's incredibly crowded and the marching band is in the way. So this is what's actually happening. The commanding officer will march the new guard into position alongside the old guard. He'll then reach into the sentry box, grab a clipboard, read the new guard his duties and pass on any messages from the captain of the old guard. Once complete, he'll put the clipboard back, collect the old guard coming off duty, before marching on and repeating the process at every station where a new guard needs to replace an old guard. Again, the exact same thing is happening at Buckingham Palace, but most people don't see that, because they're too busy being entertained by the marching band, who have now taken up residence towards the centre of the palace forecourt and is now playing some pretty banging tunes. God, I love that song. At exactly 11:25 AM, the rest of the old guard marches out of Clarence House, where hopefully you'll still be standing, and you can get this shot of them walking back to join the old guards that are waiting at the palace. Once again, you're not going anywhere near the palace gates. Your final stop is back at Wellington Barracks. And if you can get to this side of the streets here, this is the best view of what's coming next. Once all the old guards have been replaced with the new guards at Buckingham Palace, they'll be marched into position behind the marching band at the centre gates. After confirmation that the handover is complete, the band will start playing the old guard's regimental slow march to signify that they are now leaving the palace and will now be marching down the road. At exactly 11:40, the old guards coming off duty will march out of the gates and around the Victoria Memorial. If you're standing in the correct place, i.e. where I've told you to stand, you'll get this amazing shot of the old guard coming back to Wellington Barracks. That's technically it, but I suggest sticking around for a few minutes more. You'll see the marching band stand down, you'll be saluted with swords, and the old guards will unload their weapons and remove their bayonets, before being marched with military precision back to their barracks. Whilst you're watching that, and at 11:45 AM, the final section of the new guard will march towards St James's Palace to take up their final positions. Again, you can't be in two places at once, so if you prefer to watch the new guard take up their positions, head back to St James's Palace right here where you first started. And there you have it. That's how you get the best experience of the changing of the guard ceremony, without having to queue for hours or be squashed into a crowd uncomfortably to see absolutely nothing. But I know some of you have some burning questions. This seems awfully long-winded. Why do they do it this way? The entire ceremony is there to display military might and discipline, not only to the Queen, who traditionally inspects them, but to the public and to the wider world. It's also a deterrent to anyone wanting to commit high treason or to attack the monarch. Even though it's a little long-winded by today's standards, it's full of tradition and symbolism that represents the might of the British Empire. Why do they wear those funny hats and costumes? They may look strange to tourists, but their uniforms serve a practical purpose. The bright red tunics are worn so that they stand out to members of the public, and so that they can identify each other on the battlefield. And the bearskin hats, traditionally made from real Canadian bears, are there to make them look taller and more intimidating. Why do some of them have different uniforms and different coloured feathers in their hats? Ah, you noticed. The different coloured feathers, or plumes as they're officially called, helps you identify which regiment they're from. The Queen's Guard are part of what's known as the Household Division, which comprises the top 7 regiments of the British Army. They are effectively the best of the best, and serving the Queen as one of her guards is the highest honour. There's 2 mounted regiments, known as the Household Cavalry, and there's 5 infantry regiments, known as the Foot Guards. The senior-most regiment in the British Army is the Life Guards, who have red tunics and white plumes. Next up are the Blues and Royals, who wear dark blue tunics and red plumes. The highest regiment of the Foot Guards is the Grenadier Guards, who wear white plumes on their left and have single button spacing on their tunics. The most famous of all the regiments is the Coldstream Guards, the oldest continuously serving regiment in the British Army, protecting our monarch around the clock, non-stop since 1650. They can easily be identified with bright red plumes worn on their right. Interestingly, the Scots Guards don't wear any plumes at all, but they can still be identified by the triple buttons on their tunics and the thistle on their collars. The Irish Guards will have their plumes on their right in this lovely shade of St Patrick's blue, and the Welsh Guards will wear white, green and white plumes on their left. Why can I not go up to them and take selfies for social? What's up with these guys? Look, these are not paid reenactors in silly costumes. This is not Gettysburg. These are real members of the military performing a real job with real weapons. These men and women have come home from wars. They've fought valiantly for their country. They've lost friends in battle and experienced unspeakable horror. The last thing they want when they come home to protect the Queen is tourists acting like complete pillocks in front of them. Please, do not interfere with them. Don't get in their way, don't mockingly march with them, don't distract them, don't do stupid crap for social media. If you see them marching towards you, get out of the way! There's a disturbing trend at the moment where people are intentionally provoking the Queen's Guard just to get social media likes and reactions, and I personally think that this is disgraceful. Keep your distance and be respectful of the fact that they are there to defend Queen and country, not pose for your pictures on Instagram. I just got shouted at by one of the guards. I want to see the manager. Good luck with that. If they shouted at you, they've probably done it for a reason. Either you got in their way, or you've impeded or interfered with them doing their job somehow. If you have gotten in their way, especially if they're marching, expect to be barged out of the way or trampled over. They don't care whether you're an old man, a pregnant woman, a little child, or an entitled American. They treat everyone with equal amounts of disdain and fury. They don't care about your sensitivities, and they certainly don't care if you never visit London ever again. Your civilian laws and quote-unquote rights do not apply to these men and women, If all you got is a shouting at, consider yourself lucky you're not going home in a wooden box. Their job is to protect the Queen and her property, and they'll do whatever they can to defend it, including using deadly force if necessary. Oh my god, are those weapons actually loaded? The answer is it depends. Most of the time, in peacetime like it is now, where the threat of terror is low and the Queen isn't in residence, the guns are almost always empty. They carry a loaded magazine of ammunition, just in case, but they are almost always unloaded when they're marching or patrolling their stations. In times of war, or if the threat of terror is high and the Queen is in residence, you bet your ass that gun will be loaded. And remember, these are real members of the British Armed Forces. They're not exactly shy about using them. Whether their rifles are loaded or not, those bayonets will still definitely ruin your day. And even if those guns aren't loaded, the ones that these guys are carrying certainly are. All the time. Your advice is stupid. I want to see the changing of the guard ceremony at the palace. I don't want to go to any of the other places. Well, you can do that if you want, but to get the absolute prime spots where you can see mostly everything at the palace, you'll need to stand to either the left or the right of the central gate at 9 AM or before. You'll then be waiting for at least 2 hours for the guards to come to the palace. I hope you're tall, because otherwise you won't be seeing absolutely everything, even with prime positioning. If you need a drink or the loo, that's too bad. If you deviate from your post or let anyone near your personal space, someone will steal your spot. I guarantee it. If you don't have prime position, you'll be seeing next to nothing, which is why this method of seeing the changing of the guard ceremony is superior to just standing around at the palace. You'll notice veteran tour guides, i.e. the best ones, won't take their tour groups anywhere near the palace gates when this is going on, because they know better. Wait, where are the horse guards during the changing of the guard ceremony? The changing of the guard ceremony is a misnomer because it generally refers to the changing of the foot guards. Rather inconveniently, the horse guards also have their own changing of the guard ceremony, and it generally happens at the same time as the changing of the foot guards. So, at 11 o'clock on most days, the changing of the horse guards happens here at Horse Guards Parade, which is on the opposite end of the Mall. It's not as well known, and it certainly isn't as exciting, but it's a lot quieter and you'll be able to get a lot closer to the guards here. So, if you want some really cool footage and photos, this is the place. The only day where you can see both ceremonies back to back is on a Sunday, where the horse guards change at 10 AM and the foot guards change at their normal time of 11 AM. But this is the only day that this happens. Every other day, they change guards at the same time. There's a part of the ceremony where the horse guards and the foot guards actually cross with each other on the Mall, and you can see them salute to each other, which is cool. So that, guys, was the changing of the guard ceremony. And as mentioned many times in this video, don't be one of the plonkers queuing for 2 hours at Buckingham Palace, because you'll be queuing to see not a lot. If you follow the timetable as listed in this video, I guarantee that you'll have a much better time. Okay Nin, I'm sold. What do I need to do? Well, you need to come here to Buckingham Palace. The changing of the guard ceremony happens at 11 o'clock most days. If it's during the summer, it happens virtually every day, weather permitting. And if it's not summer, it usually happens on Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays and Sundays, but always check the website just in case they cancel it for some reason. The cost to do this? It's absolutely free, so if you are on a budget visiting central London, definitely worth doing. Is there anything else I need to know? Yes. To get to these specific spots and to get the best shots for photos and videos, you'll need to arrive at these spots fairly early, and I mean 5 to 10 minutes early before it actually happens. Fortunately, most people have actually gone home by the time they've actually marched out of Buckingham Palace, so after the changing of the guard ceremony is usually the time where you'll get the best photos and videos. Also, if a police officer or one of the Queen's Guards tell you to get out of the way, for the love of God, get out of the way. These are people you really don't want to annoy, especially the Queen's Guard. So guys, that was the changing of the guard ceremony. It's definitely worth adding to your bucket list, and if you have found this video helpful or if you've enjoyed it, please be sure to like, share and subscribe. Comment on the comment section below, and if you've got other bucket list suggestions, you know what to do, tweet them at me. If we get enough suggestions, I'll make a video about it. But guys, I hope you've enjoyed it. From here at Buckingham Palace, we'll see you in the next episode.